So today we're going to talk about Saturn and what its function is in astrology and Vedic astrology. A lot of people fear Saturn because they think it's the most misery-giving planet, and it's the most dreadful planet. It brings hardship into a person's life, and you couldn't be further from the truth, because Saturn is actually the most wealth-giving planet. Saturn is the one that boosts your career. Saturn is the one that is responsible to how much wealth you can accumulate in this life. So when people are fearful of it, they are just going by some of these bias and some of this spread out knowledge that's on the internet. Before, people really didn't know about Saturn because all they heard was from in person and books. But when online happened, when the internet happened, their fear excelled because there was a lot more junk on the internet regarding Saturn. Now, Saturn is really not a hardship or a misery-giving planet. Saturn just shows you what your limits are. Okay, if this is the box, okay, it's going to show you this is what your limit is right now. Now, it's going to tell you how to work within it and how to break out of it and excel from it. But a lot of people, without knowing their boundaries, they want to run before they can crawl or before they can walk. What Saturn does is just takes you back and shows you that, look, right now you're an infant. You cannot run. You're going to fall. You're going to break your bones. Right now you need to start to crawl. And once you learn to crawl, the boundaries will increase. Okay, you can walk now. Once you learn to walk, Saturn will say, okay, now you can run. Now here's the big box. That's what Saturn is. And in astrology, mainly Vedic astrology, Saturn has 3 aspects. First of all, it already aspects the house that it sits in. So if it's sitting on the first house, that's one of its aspects, but we don't really call it an aspect because that's where Saturn is sitting. But Saturn also looks at the 3rd, 7th, and 10th house from itself. So if Saturn is in ascendant, which is the first house, Saturn is going to be looking at the 3rd house. And Saturn is going to be looking directly opposite to the 7th house because it's the 7th aspect. And it's going to look at the 10th house because it's 10th aspect on the 10th house. Now let's say if Saturn was in the 3rd house, will it have the same house aspects? No. Then in the 3rd house, Saturn will aspect the 5th house, 9th house, and the 12th house, because those are the 3, 7, and 10 places from the 3rd house. So these aspects of Saturn are very important. Okay, you got to know what aspect is doing what in Saturn. So let's say if Saturn is sitting in the 3rd house. Okay, what is it doing sitting there and through its aspects? Well, in the 3rd house, Saturn is going to pretty much limit your relationship with your siblings, the communication with your siblings. You will not have good relations with your siblings. And it's going to throw a restrictive negative effect on the 5th house because Saturn's 3rd aspect is somewhat negative versus the 7th and the 10th aspect. So when Saturn is aspecting the 5th house from the 3rd house, what it's going to do, it's going to delay the pregnancy, whether it's man's chart or woman's chart. It's going to delay the arrival of a child in one's life. It's going to limit the education of the person. His 5th house is education. So it's going to either limit the education or completely cancel it. Now, more of the positive aspect of Saturn is the 7th house aspect and the 10th house aspect. So from the third house, if it's looking over to the ninth house, and ninth house is of long distance travel, it's of finding some sort of lot of wisdom as a treasure. Okay, it's not a treasure as in fortune. They always say ninth house is fortune. No, it's literally finding a treasure of wisdom and knowledge. Okay, it's going to create a lot of travel for you. It's also going to bring you into your higher self as a human being. And then it's going to aspect the 12th house. 12th house of foreign lands, foreign travel, trade, import-export business. Your imagination is going to excel. But you got to remember one thing. Even though the 7th and 10th aspect of Saturn is not as bad as the third one, all the aspects of Saturn limit a person's ability to excel in certain areas of their life, wherever Saturn is placed, up to the age of 34 to 36. So if, let's say, Saturn is sitting in the third house, as I mentioned, it's going to be either put a hold on somebody's education and pregnancy until 34, or it's going to be really, really, really hard for this person to achieve it before the age of 34 or 35. And after 35, everything excels. Everything, whatever they want, it happens. And since the third house is known as the Upacha house in Vedic astrology, meaning that it's a house of growth. And so Saturn grows in this house. It does well. All the negative planets like Mars, Saturn, North Node, South Node, and the Sun, which is also considered a malefic planet, does well in the third house because it grows with time. So in this third house, it might limit the education of a person. The person cannot get their bachelor's or master's degree till after the age of 35. Their businesses, their wealth, their career will be stuck till the age of 34, 35, especially depending on the aspect in the house that it's sitting in. If it's in the first house and it's looking over at the 7th house, it's literally it's going to delay the marriage of a person, and until at least after the age of 32. And if that person, whoever has a Saturn in the first house or the 7th house or the 5th house or the 10th house, it's going to restrict their marriage. And anytime this person with these kind of placements gets married early, in their 20s, early 20s, even late 20s, most likely they're going to end up getting a divorce. Okay, if there's no beneficial aspect on the 7th house. So Saturn, it's limiting it. So again, in the 7th house aspect, even the 3rd, 7th, or 10th house aspect, it's really restricting the marriage of a person if it's aspecting the 7th house from those eyesights. But after that age, Saturn will release its hold on you. You will be able to find a good partner for marriage. You will be able to have kids. You will be able to excel in your career. You will be able to pay off your debts if you're in debt. I mean, there's other factors involved, including Mars, when it comes to debt. But Saturn, pretty much, people need to stop fearing this planet because it wants to give. Okay, Saturn wants to give. It wants to give a lot to people. And especially if you have a excelled Saturn in Libra, or a Saturn in its own sign of Aquarius or Capricorn, during its dasha, during its time period, in Vedic astrology there's a time period for each planet. So in your 80-90 years of life, certain planet will be ruling the majority of your life. So Moon might control 10 years, Mars might control 7 years of your life. Then after that might come the North Node will control 18 years, and Jupiter will control 16 years. Then Saturn will control 19 years, depending upon these time periods. Whichever one's operating, that's how your life's going to be. So let's say if you have excelled Saturn, okay, and your time period comes of 19 years, and that Saturn is in a good position, in a good house, you are going to get more wealth than you can handle. Okay, sure, your other planets might be bad, in the bad position, but if your main dasha planet is strong, it's going to neutralize it, and it's going to balance all the negative effects out. And another myth I want to get rid of is the myth of Sati. myth of 7.5 years of dreadful time in person's life when Saturn goes over to the natal moon off of your birth chart. So when Saturn is transiting for 2.5 years in each sign, and it comes to the point where your moon is located in your main birth horoscope, it starts this 7.5 year cycle of complete chaos, and it's not true. Okay, I've seen millionaires make billions in their Saraswati, which is the name of this 7.5 year transit. I have seen millionaires stay millionaires. I have seen people become zero to millionaires in 7.5 year transit. 7.5 year transit doesn't really do much at all. What it does is 2.5 years. Whenever Saturn goes over to the moon of your birth chart, which is a 2.5 year period, that's the only period that you're really going to suffer. After that, it doesn't really matter. It's all up to you. It's up to your other stars. It's up to you how hard you're working. It's up to where Saturn is placed in your main birth chart. So if Saturn is limiting your success till the age of 35, and you go through this 7.5 year period of Saraswati, in that time period, it really doesn't matter because you still have to wait till 35. But the main bad period is only 2.5 years when it goes over to the natal moon. So I hope this helped. Check out the link below, which is to my website, which talks about more about planets, astrology, and my book. Thank you.